today. Got an outdoors edition and it's gonna be fucking windy. I just wanted to get these ones out of the way because I'm out, and it's the best opportunity I've got to do it. I'm going to try and cover up the thing so it's not too windy there. I'm just going to read through them quickly because there are quite a few. Perhaps it's because the people responsible for diversifying vocabulary haven't come into sufficient contact with the problems that would make this particular adaptation necessary. But it seems to me that we need a greater number of words for describing the different forms of us as individuals. The self is a multifaceted thing, and one blanket term doesn't do it justice, nor is it conducive to meaningful and revealing discussions on the topic. It is in many ways a huge impediment to understanding what other people mean and what we mean ourselves when talking about the self. So too with I, you, or one. Darren mentions a Zen phrase, "Everywhere you go, there you are," and I believe the meaning of this phrase can only be grasped with a nuanced understanding of the word you. Well, not that nuanced, it's not like you're a genius if you understand it, but anyway. The two yous in that one sentence describe different things. If they didn't, the sentence would be as vacuous as it seems. And it needn't seem this way. The illusion of vacuousness could be eliminated with minimal effort. A you that describes you in your entirety would be patently useful and would feature in the first half of the phrase. An alteration of you, maybe ye, thanks Z's, I didn't see the third who says anyway, would describe the consciousness which is not independent of the body, but hypothetically not integral to the body's mechanical functions, and what we talk of when considering our subjective experience. More variations would also be useful, and a full array could and should be devised to suit our needs. My new answer to the dreaded, he brought up the "so what do you do" question in thingy, and I thought it was quite never mind. So what do you do? I don't. What? Some people do. I don't. That's going to be my new answer. If we say what do you do, I'm going to say I don't. I'll have fun with them. Another type of you is the you. What the fuck? Is the you that is consistent throughout time, as compared to the you that is specific to a certain time. Of course we change from moment to moment and are sculpted by our internal and external environments. If you didn't change at each given moment, we would be an identical copy, including all our gathered knowledge and memories throughout time, which is of course impossible. In my revised hero's journey idea, it wouldn't be enough for the hero to form symbiotic relationships with animals alone. For it to serve as any sort of guide for achieving the goals it promotes as both attainable and worth attaining, it would need to emphasize the importance of forming meaningful social relationships with other humans and maintaining these relationships, not just a story of the eternal outcast. It must also be an outcast brought back into the fold. Right, or something like that. That was a pretty bullshit one. Okay, this is starting to annoy me now. Jordan Peterson accepted a claim that implied, at least it seemed like this is what it said, this is what was said, that all atheists believe in a relativistic morality, or at least they have to, if they really are atheists, which is bullshit, and it got me thinking about what my morality is. I previously said that I largely agree with Sam's basis for morality, but I think I actually take it one step further. Sam's morality requires one assumption, that the absolute worst misery and suffering for all creatures in the universe is bad, and the word bad obviously implies that we should avoid that, and any movement in the opposite direction is good. I am taken back to a time in RS, probably in year 8 or 9, when we were discussing morality. It struck me as the most obvious thing in the world that morality was just a matter of when someone hits you, you don't like it. So you presume with fair certainty that if you were to hit them, they would not like it either. And so an agreement is struck under which all relevant parties promise not to act unduly towards others, and they will respond in kind. Obviously, I didn't use quite that language, but I was literally shocked by the bewilderment with which I was met. Oh, golly, pretentious little prick. And how swiftly everyone just moved on as if I'd said something truly stupid. Is it not clear that reciprocity is a more than decent basis for morality? My latest basis for a secular morality is grounded in a similar principle, but takes into account my claim that one's own subjective experience is ultimately all that matters. Once we recognise that our subjective experience is the final frontier, the point at which any reason to have morality in the first place is cashed out, not forgetting that we are considering the entire subjective experience spanning the time it is in existence, then all you need to realise is that there is some set of rules for behaviour which will offer the greatest yield for your long-term subjective experience. And if you think that being a hedonistic narcissist without any compassion for others is the only lifestyle such acknowledgements would advise, well, why the fuck would you ever think that? Of course it works out better in the long run to behave kindly towards others, as reciprocity will result in the same reciprocity will result in the same being done to you. It's sim fucking biosis, dipshits. Okay, sounding like a right twat now. it works better in writing. Do you think it doesn't even work that well? Do you think each 1 in 8 billion will be better off trying to manipulate 7,999,999 who are also trying to do the same thing, or the one with 7,999,999,999 people trying to work with them to make each other's lives better? Is the bundle of sticks being stronger than each individual twig? Metaphor, whatever it was. I think there should be general archetypes, so that is a general archetype that is applicable to the masses would contain more basic rules that allow for a cohesive society. Love thy neighbour, love your family, try your best, be good, and so on. So basically what Christianity is from most people. But then you also need more individualised archetypes. So there's no point having an archetype that sets out a path of intellectual pursuit for a person who has no intellectual potential. But there is much sense in having one for those who do possess such talents, but need guidance in how to best actualise their potential. So, I think you need archetypes to to minimise the amount of time people... No one comes into this world knowing exactly how to behave to best achieve everything. So, throughout time we should be developing archetypes so we can work out what works best for most people, and also for individuals that will work best for most people, how they can behave to benefit most people, including themselves. And then you have better yield if you made individualised ones depending on people's abilities. Okay, Rick and Morty dimension where all the Jesuses are sent and live with one another. They form a society going around loving each other. I just quite like the idea of just a bunch of Jesuses forming a little society, and how some of them are really stupid, some of them are smart. Unfortunately, Happy has taken a bit of a turn in my estimations. I'm only a third of the way through, so there's plenty of time for him to win me back over again. But as I shall admit in the following sentence, perhaps he hasn't lost me all that much after all. He seems to have revealed his hand as an almost all-out support of the adoption of Stoicism for now, although if previous chapters are any indication, I imagine he won't fail to point out many of its weaknesses. I have previously been very unimpressed with much of what Stoicism promotes. However, the Stoic fork idea, although on its surface seems completely shallow to me, might have some benefits once implemented well. My scepticism arises when we are told to only concern ourselves with our own thoughts and actions, and ignore everything, or rather understand that many things are out of our control. I find myself almost always being able to imagine scenarios in which what they claim to be out of our control to be largely under the influence of our thoughts and actions. However, I can nearly imagine that the statement "I'm going to try to be bored as little as possible" might be a better approach than relying on the right combination of YouTube videos and spontaneous events occurring around you as to stave off your boredom. Then again, how you actually go about not being bored might still remain mysterious, but I suppose at least you acknowledge that it's up to you how diligently you pursue this desire. Another point of conflict would be all things that might be within the realms of your control, or at least within your influence, but you just don't know it, or how to enact your influence. Of course, the obvious response would be that knowing it is out of your control, but you don't know that either. You simply don't know whether knowing it is out of your control, and the way to go about knowing it is very unlikely to be to treat it as if it is unknowable. This sounds very Carl Jungian and Freud and all those psychoanalyst types, but I think this is a little bit of advice that I think basically everything Jordan Peterson says can be encapsulated in this sentence, and is, well, no, not everything, but all the stuff that isn't his Christian sympathising bullshit. Become your own parent. Consider how you spend your day, how you have spent your day, and if there's something in there that you don't approve of because you don't think it is best for you, then don't allow yourself to do it in the future. And we know a good parent should be firm but fair and loving, right? And probably some other attributes, but firm, fair and loving gets most of it, and you've got to become your own parent. So, when you grow up, that should be a main part of growing up, I reckon. And it's probably, I think they talk about, I think it's probably Young or something like that, it's on about you've got a death of the father or something like that. I think that's just not very helpful because it's too metaphorical and too confused, it's too complex. Why don't you just say fucking become your own parent, and that's really what it is, I reckon. I think my problem with Stoicism is that I already am a Stoic in all the ways that matter. Much of the Stoic attitude seems to be in line with a Buddhist attitude, and I don't find myself particularly attached to anything to any great degree. In fact, that's probably one of my main weaknesses. The problem of what I said was the problem is that despite all this, I can't help being bored all the bloody time, and it's on points like this where it seems fairly useless, and seems to revert to Aristotle's false belief that you can just think yourself unbored. I don't care an awful lot what other people get up to, or how their actions may affect me on the surface. I care about the way I feel, and I almost always feel bored. Advice for socially awkward slash anxious types, likely very lonely, and they are told that all they need to do is make friends. Now that's not as easy as people seem to tell them it is. The situation is like this. It's much like you've turned up to work at your new job. It's your first day. But everybody else there has no idea it's your first day. They're all looking at you scornfully, wondering why the hell you're not getting on with your job. You know what your job is. You're supposed to work on an extremely intricate and complicated machine, what might be a coffee machine, but you're not quite sure. Humans are complicated machines, man. You put in some sort of string of information, and you can never be 100% certain what you'll get out, or even whether you'll get anything out at all. Anyway, you see the machine, and it looks humongous. It's daunting. You can't even reach for some of the buttons, but you know you want to get on with something so that people don't start to look at you even more funny than they already are. You don't know what you're doing. So you look for a manual. Well, there is one. It just comes in 10,000 volumes and is indecipherable to your untrained eyes. So you realise you have to try using the machine, learning by doing. Luckily, there are some presets which you can press just a few simple buttons and observe how the machine works. Get a feel for it. These presets can be likened to institutionalized, refined engagements, like ones at a shop counter. The conversation has a loose script they will have fallen into over time, and so the analogy continues until eventually you're making barista-style lattes, and the machine seems immensely smaller than it had when you started. Alright, final one, thank God. I'm not sure if people really get hung up on this, but I'm failing to see how quantum dynamics is any sort of rebuttal to determinism. Just because it's true that particles can exist in states where the only judgment we can make about them statistically is that they are in two states at once and will only become fixed in one state after they have been observed, does not mean that they are not deterministic. It simply means that we might not, and most probably cannot, ever expect to have a complete model of what the determined future of our universe will be. That does not by any means mean that it isn't deterministic, just that we don't know how it is determined prior to it manifesting itself before us. Is there some confusion about this? Take it, you Bournemouth. You still can't have free will, but you're still not free from having to complete the actions which will lead to the results you desire. Whether you do or do not complete these actions, or choose the right ones, or decide you want to say fuck the system, is all dependent on every preceding event the universe has ever undertaken. Of course we feel like we are independent authors, but that too is a product of our determined universe. Alright, I'll do. Bye.